They say that mothers should know their place. So when I offered a kind suggestion at my granddaughter's birthday, my daughter turned to me and said, "We don't need your opinion, Mom." The entire room fell silent. I simply smiled because just 2 weeks earlier I had quietly signed the will. I removed her name from it, and when the lawyer read it aloud, her smug little smile vanished. You have to see what happened next. Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. I have always believed that mothers shape their lives around their children and not the other way around. For 43 years, I adjusted my world to Melissa's. I graded papers until the late hours to attend her swimming meets. I postponed the defense of my doctorate for half a year when she needed jaw surgery in her final year. After Richard died suddenly when she was 12, I worked 2 jobs, teaching by day and editing academic journals by night to keep her sense of stability. My colleagues called me brilliant. They never knew how many times I chose family over career advancement. When Melissa launched her marketing firm, I withdrew $7,000 from my retirement fund to assist her through the first year of challenges. The penalty for early withdrawal was significant, but I kept quiet. When she and Kevin bought their first... The house in West Hills came with my contribution to the initial payment, money I had saved for a sabbatical year in London that I never took. When Jasmine was born, I rearranged my teaching schedule to care for her 3 days a week until she started daycare. I still remember the scent of Jasmine's hair as I rocked her to sleep, humming the same lullabies that Yolanda Melissa used to sing. The way Melissa would climb onto my lap with picture books, always demanding again at the end of each story the Mother's Day cards she made in elementary school, with careful cursive notes declaring I was the best mother in the universe. The tears of pride in her eyes when I crossed the stage at her college graduation, though I suspect it was more meaningful for her than for me. At some point, my daughter's eyes stopped meeting mine. My calls began going straight to voicemail. My suggestions were met with tight smiles and quick refusals. "It doesn't work like that anymore, Mom," she would say. But my checkbook was always welcome. For Jasmine's 22nd birthday, I spent 3 weeks knitting a cardigan in her favorite shade of blue. I used cashmere yarn I had been saving for a special occasion. Maybe motherhood is just that, a lifetime of saving things for other people's special moments. "Mom, couldn't you have worn something a little more up to date?" Melissa's eyes they rested on my cream-colored silk blouse and on my navy blue trousers while I stood at the entrance of Richard's house in West Hills. Behind her, I noticed the dining table set up for Mother's Day lunch with elegant crockery and fresh flowers. "It looks very lovely," I said, running a hand over the silk fabric. It was one of my finest pieces, bought for a speech I had delivered at Columbia 5 years ago. "That's good," she sighed. "The catering team is on the terrace. Everyone is outside." I followed her through the house, admiring the new abstract painting in the hallway, likely expensive considering Melissa's taste. My gift bag carrying the hand-knitted cardigan for Jasmine gently swung against my leg. Grandma Jasmine rose from her chair with a genuine smile and crossed the terrace to embrace me. Her warmth was a balm against the morning chill. At 22 years old, she had both Richard's height and my eyes, but carried her own sweet nature. "Happy Mother's Day," said Kevin as he stood up to kiss my cheek. I have always taught my son-in-law well, although he seldom held my gaze for long. "You look good, Barbara." Christine, my daughter's older stepsister, nodded from across the table. We had never been very close, yet she showed the decency to greet me. Her husband, Tom, raised his mimosa in salute. I took the empty seat next to Jasmine, noticing it was the farthest one from the rest. Melissa was seated at the head of the table. The terrace overlooked a meticulously maintained garden where the dogwoods were just beginning to bloom. Richard would have loved this view. "We ordered your favorite dish, Grandma." "Eggs Benedict," Jasmine said, gently squeezing my hand beneath the table. "How thoughtful," I smiled. "So how are your new classes going?" "You mentioned that design course," she asked. "Oh, Mom, please do not start grilling her the moment you sit down." Melissa interrupted, adjusting her gold bracelet. "It is Sunday. Let us not make too much noise." "I do not mind," Jasmine replied quickly. Actually, she wanted to tell Grandma about her project. "I am using some of the textile design techniques you taught me last summer, the old weaving patterns." Melissa laughed, glancing at Christine, who smiled faintly in response. "Dear, nobody uses those anymore. Your teacher will think you are hopelessly retro." "There is actually a big revival of traditional craftsmanship in modern design," Jasmine countered. "My teacher mentioned that specifically." "Well, you should talk to Marcus from my agency," Melissa interrupted. "He's doing amazing work with digital textile rendering, which are far more marketable skills." I noticed my granddaughter's shoulders tense slightly, but she said nothing. I recognized that small gesture, the art of suppressing disappointment to keep the peace. The caterers arrived with the first course. Small plates featured toasts topped with avocado, microgreens, and edible flowers. The discussion revolved around Kevin's recent promotion and the kitchen renovation Christine was planning. I listened attentively and contributed occasionally when spoken to. Barbara mentioned during a pause that Tom had heard the Pachita University intended to name a new scholarship after me. "Congratulations," he said. I thanked him and nodded. The scholarship was meant for non-traditional female students in the humanities. It was nothing grand but held personal importance. My mother had taught there forever, Melissa explained to Christine's new son-in-law who had joined our group. Now that was history. She chuckled softly but admitted the dismissal had hurt her. 34 years, I whispered. "And I remain on the Emeritus Advisory Board," I continued. However, Melissa reflected, the university did not seem stuck in time. Those old buildings, old mindsets. When Jasmine was exploring universities, I practically begged her to look at something more forward-thinking. Kevin reminded me that my mother had been the head of the linguistics department and was highly respected in her field. Of course she was, Melissa waved dismissively. In my time, or rather my era, it felt as if my intellectual contributions had expired like milk left too long in the fridge. When the Eggs Benedict arrived, I realized my appetite was small. Jasmine noticed the curious look in my eyes but offered a comforting smile. This was not the first time Melissa had belittled me in front of others. Over the years, I had built a protective shell of respectable distance. "Grandma," Jasmine said, "I actually need to ask you a big favor. I'm going to apply for the design internship in Copenhagen that we talked about, and I was hoping you could look over my application essay. Your editing skills are legendary." "Of course, dear. I would love to help," Melissa interrupted sharply. "Your father and I have already paid that professional advisor to review your materials. You do not need to burden your grandmother." "It is no trouble at all," I said. And respectfully, "Mom, academic writing is totally different from what Jasmine needs here. The creative industries have completely different expectations nowadays." "Actually," Jasmine said, "the application specifically asks for a narrative about our creative influences, and I was writing about Grandma's textile collection from her research in Peru, and how—" "Oh dear," Melissa laughed, sounding like glass breaking. "Nobody wants to read about old dusty fabric samples. You should focus on contemporary influences, digital platforms, sustainability, things that matter today." The table fell into uncomfortable silence. Even Kevin looked down at his plate. "Those textiles are museum-quality pieces," I said quietly. "The Metropolitan acquired similar works from—" My colleague just last year said, "Mom," and Melissa's voice took on that slow and heavy tone people use for those very old or very simple. "I am sure your old research was valuable at the time, but Jasmine needs to look ahead, not behind. She's about to step into a cutting-edge industry." I put down the fork. "My old research, as you call it, is still referenced in contemporary ethnographic studies on textiles. Just last month, I received a request from a doctoral student." "This is exactly what I mean." Melissa said, turning to address the table in general, not just me. Mom lives in this academic bubble where everyone still communicates like carrier pigeons. Christine chuckled gently. Kevin examined his mimosa with unusual focus. I send emails, Melissa, I said sharply. I even send text messages. Sometimes I use Zoom. That is not the point, she snapped. The point is, Jasmine needs guidance relevant to today's world, not outdated advice. I do not think Grandma's guidance is outdated, Jasmine interrupted calmly but firmly. Melissa's face hardened. That is precisely why you are still living at home at 22, unable to commit to a clear professional path. You keep being dragged by those romantic ideas of craftsmanship and tradition instead of moving forward. Developing marketable skills. I am not sure this is the right time, Kevin began. It goes without saying, insisted Melissa. And frankly, Mom, you are not making things easier by encouraging such impractical pursuits. I reached for my glass of water with a slightly trembling hand. I simply believe that Jasmine should follow her passions. We do not need your opinion, Mom, Melissa interrupted, her voice slicing through the fresh spring air. Only your checkbook. The table fell into complete silence. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. I felt the words hit me like a physical blow that momentarily took my breath away. Across the table, Christine's eyes were wide open in shock. Kevin looked at his wife in disbelief. Melissa, he said quietly. My daughter did not look at him, her eyes fixed on mine, defiant and unapologetic. 71 years of life had taught me many things. Among them, never give anyone the satisfaction of knowing they have deeply hurt you. I took a long sip of water, set the glass down, and wiped my lips with a napkin. I see, I finally said with a steady voice, despite the turmoil inside. I stood up, grabbed my purse, and pulled out a small envelope. This is for you, Jasmine. Happy birthday, a little late. Grandma, please don't go, Jasmine said, standing up as well. I just remembered an appointment, I lied softly. Thank you for the brunch, Melissa. It was enlightening. I placed the gift bag with the blue cashmere cardigan on the chair and turned around to leave. Mom, don't be so dramatic, Melissa called after me. You know I never meant that. Enjoy the rest of your Mother's Day, I said, without looking back. My voice echoed across the terrace as I walked toward the house. The check is in the envelope, Jasmine. Apparently, that is all they expect from me. I moved through the house carrying what I hoped was dignity, though my heart pounded fiercely. Behind me, I could hear Kevin's deep voice and Jasmine's higher-pitched tone, rising in what sounded like an argument. Once inside the car, I stayed still, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I did not cry. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had not called in a long time. Markle's office, a kind voice answered. This is Barbara Ellison, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my tone. I need to see Marsh as soon as possible. It is about my will. As I drove away from my daughter's beautiful house, I glanced back one last time. Through the glass doors, I could still see them seated at the table, Melissa gesturing emphatically, while only Jasmine looked toward the entrance with a worried young face. Some lessons arrive late in life. This one took too long to come, but now I was finally ready to learn it. There is power in being valued, strength in silent action, and consequences to face. I was determined to tell and prepare for them. The story took us quite some time, so if you are enjoying it, please subscribe to our channel. It means a great deal to us. Now, let's return to the tale. The drive from Melissa's house to downtown Portland usually lasted 23 minutes, but I needed extra time. I parked near the river and strolled while watching the ripples of the water beneath the afternoon sun. 43 years of motherhood echoed with every step. The first words, scraped knees, college applications, wedding toasts, everything led to this moment of clarity. We don't need your opinion, Mom, just your checkbook. I had always believed love meant sacrifice without acknowledgement, but as I watched a ferry crossing the Willamette, I wondered if I had mistaken selflessness for complacency. Marshall's law firm occupied the 5th floor of a renovated brick building in the Pearl District. His assistant led me into a small conference room where sunlight streamed through tall windows. I declined the coffee, even though my mouth felt dry. "Barbara," Marcia said as she entered, her silver hair swaying confidently. We had been friends since our 30s, back when she handled Richard's life insurance after his heart attack. "This is unexpected." Her message said it was urgent. "I need to update my will," I stated simply. Marcia sat opposite me. Her expression shifted to one of professional concern. "All right, what changes do you want to make?" "Are we having a disagreement?" "I want to completely remove Melissa from the situation." I spoke the words, surprisingly easy to say aloud, and leave everything to Jasmine instead. Barbara raised her eyebrows, pulled out a notepad, but did not write anything down immediately. "That is meaningful. May I ask what prompted this?" "Things have been deteriorating for years," I said while staring at the horizon over Portland. "I have ignored it. I made excuses. Today, Melissa made it clear to me that my only worth to the family is financial." I recounted the lunch conversation, keeping my voice steady even though the wound was still fresh. Barbara listened without interruption. Her expression showed what I refused to let mine reveal. "I see," she said when I finished. "Are you sure you are not making a decision in the heat of the moment?" "These things can sometimes fund my daughter's life for decades," I said. "I paid for her education, the start of her business, and the down payment on her house. I have been generous because I believed in supporting her dreams, but I will not allow myself to be stripped of my dignity along with my savings." Barbara studied me for a moment. We had known each other for so long that I recognized her assessment was not about my legal right to change the will, but about my emotional state. "You understand this will probably cause a major break in your relationship," she said carefully. "The break already exists," I replied. "I am just acknowledging it. Melissa has made it clear that my only value is financial, monetary. He does not respect me as a mother, nor as a scholar, nor even as a person with valid perspectives. I no longer wish to reward that behavior." Melissa nodded slowly. "And Jasmine, tell me about her." My expression softened. She is different, thoughtful, placing more value on substance than on appearance. She is carving out her own path in design, blending traditional techniques with contemporary uses. She listens when I speak, asks questions about my research and experiences. "Does she know anything about this decision?" "No," I answered firmly, "and I do not want her to know until it becomes necessary." We both understood what I meant, that not until after my death. "Very well." Melissa took out her laptop. "Let me get the paperwork ready. It will take about an hour. Are you comfortable waiting?" "I have nowhere else to be," I replied. While Melissa worked in her office, I sat alone with my thoughts. Outside the window, the city went on with its Sunday afternoon rhythm. People walking dogs, couples holding hands, a street musician playing saxophone on the corner. I thought about Melissa when she was small and held my hand tightly crossing streets, when she started pulling away, when her gaze turned cold. My phone buzzed with incoming messages. 3 from Jasmine. "Grandma, are you okay? I am really sorry about Mom. She went too far. Please call me when you can." 1 from Kevin. "Barbara, I apologize for what happened. Melissa is upset but refuses to admit it. Please call me when you are ready to talk." Nothing from Melissa. I placed the phone face down without answering. For once I would act instead of reacting. Marshall returned with several documents, explaining each one carefully. This voids all previous wills and establishes the new one. Her estate, the house, The investments, retirement accounts, and personal belongings will pass to Jasmine Eleanor Ellison upon her death. And nothing to Melissa. Confirmed, nothing, Marcia stated. Although a clause is included that explicitly recognizes her as your daughter and declares that the omission is intentional, not an oversight. This helps protect the will from challenges. Could it be contested? Could someone try? Marcia asked. Anyone can file a lawsuit, but Oregon law grants testators wide freedom to distribute their assets as they wish. As long as you are of sound mind, which you clearly are, and not under undue influence, the will should hold. I read every page carefully since the scholar in me refused to sign anything without a thorough review. The legal language transformed my work and life's possessions into clinical terms: assets, real estate, personal effects, financial instruments. My existence was reduced to belongings that would outlive me. However, upon reaching the page of the signing the document, I felt an unusual sense of relief. For far too long, I had allowed Melissa to have certain rights. This paper marked a boundary I should have set many years ago. Before you sign, Marcia said, I want to ask again if you are sure. Family separations can be incredibly painful. I looked straight into her eyes. The hurt is already there, Marcia. I simply refused to pretend otherwise. She nodded and called her assistant along with another staff member to act as witnesses. Holding the pen felt heavy in my hand, burdened with consequence, as I signed each page carefully and deliberately. What happens now? I asked after finishing. The original will stay in our fireproof safe, Marcia explained. You will take a copy home. I suggest you keep it somewhere safe but reachable for Jasmine in case something happens to you. What about notifying them? I asked, uncertain of what I was really asking. You are not required to inform Melissa about this change. It is entirely your choice. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. I think I will let the document speak for itself when the time comes. And when will that be? Marcia asked gently. I thought for a moment. I want you to arrange a family meeting in 3 weeks. Tell them it is about planning the estate and future arrangements. Which is true. I want everyone to be there. Melissa, Kevin, Jasmine. As your lawyer, I must warn you that surprising you in this way might only escalate tensions, Marcia cautioned. I am not doing this to create drama, I whispered. Yet after decades of silent compromise, I need you to understand that my choices carry consequences. Even if you do not appreciate my views, you will have to acknowledge my actions. Leaving the office with the will safely tucked in my bag, the spring sunshine in Portland had vanished behind clouds. Perfect, I thought. The weather matched my mood precisely. I glanced once more at my phone. 2 more messages from Jasmine, growing increasingly anxious. One from Kevin stating that Melissa was still processing everything. Still no direct communication from my daughter. Instead of heading home, I drove to the university campus where I had spent 30 years teaching. On a Sunday afternoon, the grounds were peaceful. I walked along familiar paths, nodding to a few students and colleagues. Outside the linguistics building, where my name was still listed on the department's website as Professor Emeritus, I sat on a bench beneath a blooming cherry tree. I remembered bringing Melissa here as a child and letting her play in my office while I prepared lessons. Back then, she was proud and told her friends that her mother held an important role at the university. When had that pride turned into contempt? I took out my phone and finally replied to Jasmine. I'm fine, dear. I'm taking some time for myself. We will talk soon. Love you. To Kevin, you have nothing to apologize for. You never said those words. To Melissa, I wrote and deleted 3 different messages before putting the phone away without sending anything. What could I possibly say? You have hurt me. She knew this and didn't care at all. I had changed my mind. That alone would only reinforce her belief that I was nothing more than financial support. No, silence would speak on my behalf now. The will would be my final statement in a conversation where they had spoken about me for far too long. The rain began to fall lightly as I walked back to my car. When I got home, it was pouring down heavily. The spring downpour washed away all the morning's pretenses and left only the truth behind. I placed the will in my desk drawer beneath the folder that held Jasmine's childhood drawings. Then I sat in my reading chair, watching raindrops slide down the window pane, waiting for the storm inside me to pass. 3 weeks went by in a haze of deliberate routine. I watered the plants as planned. I went to my book club and prepared the lectures for the course I taught every spring at the community college. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Deep down, tectonic plates were shifting. Melissa called twice. The first time, she left a voicemail that somehow mixed an apology with defensiveness. "Mom, I think you misunderstood what I was trying to say at lunch. I was stressed because of work. Call me." The second call came 3 days later. "Mom, are you seriously acting childish? It was not a big deal." I did not return either call. For the first time in our relationship, I did not rush to calm things down or hide the pain. The silence between us shifted from awkward to something almost familiar. Kevin occasionally sent me messages with neutral updates about his life. A dinner with a client, a neighborhood party, the weather. I replied with the same politeness and brevity. We were playing out a charade of normalcy, and I realized I had a knack for the role. Jasmine was different. She visited me twice, brought coffee, and sat in my kitchen with genuine concern shining in her eyes. "Grandma, are you really okay?" she asked on her second visit, watching me arrange tulips in a vase. "I'm fine, dear," I answered, trimming a stem carefully. "I'm just rethinking a few things." "Mom feels terrible," she said, though her tone hinted at something else. I raised an eyebrow. "Did she tell you that?" Jasmine looked down at her coffee. "Not exactly. She said you are being oversensitive and that it will pass eventually." I added another tulip to the bouquet. "And what do you think?" "I believe she was cruel," Jasmine said simply, "and I think—" It had lasted longer than I had initially thought, though I never fully realized it until that particular day. I approached her and gave her hand a firm squeeze. As we grow, relationships evolve. Sometimes it is only from a distance that one sees people more clearly. "Are you going to forgive her?" Jasmine asked. I carefully weighed the question. Forgiveness was not the real issue. The real issue was understanding. Your mother and I need to better comprehend each other's boundaries. Jasmine nodded, although I sensed she did not completely grasp what I meant. How could she? She knew nothing about the will. Exactly 1 week before my estate planning meeting, Melissa finally showed up at my door unexpectedly. She was as flawless as ever. Cashmere sweater, designer jeans, freshly styled hair. She carried a small gift bag. "Mom," she said with a strained smile, "enough is enough. I came here to make peace." I let her in and offered tea, which she declined. We sat in the living room with the afternoon light filtering through the lace curtains I had kept since before she was born. "I brought you something," she said, handing me the gift bag. Inside was an expensive bottle of perfume. "Is this from that French boutique you like?" I thanked her and set it aside unopened. That was very thoughtful, so we must be okay now, right? She crossed her legs and asked about the component placement. I said something inconsiderate. She forgave me, and now we can continue. I examined my daughter's face, so much like mine in its structure, yet somehow tougher, more calculating. "Is that what you think happened?" She sighed dramatically. "Mom, I was stressed about hosting. I said something I did not mean." "Why are you dragging this out? Were you serious?" I asked in a low voice. "What?" "When you said you only needed my checkbook, not my opinions, were you serious?" Melissa shifted uncomfortably. "Of course not. It was just a moment of frustration." The truth often emerges in moments of frustration, I observed. Why do you get like this? Melissa's voice took on that familiar tone. I have come to apologize. You did? I looked around, waiting. Actually, I had not heard any apology. Her cheeks flushed. Fine, I'm sorry if what I said hurt your feelings. But you have to admit, Mom, sometimes your advice is outdated. The world has changed since your time. Again, with your era, as if my relevance had expired along with my youth. The basics of respect have not changed, I said firmly. Did you tell Jasmine about the meeting at Marcia's office next week? The abrupt change of subject caught her off guard. Yes, but what does that have to do with... I was just checking, I interrupted. It is important that everyone attends. Everything is fine. A flash of worry crossed her face. You are not sick, right? I am perfectly healthy, she replied. I assured her. I am simply getting my affairs in proper order. That is what responsible people my age do. Melissa visibly relaxed. How nice, for a moment I thought she might. She stopped mid-sentence, but I caught the unspoken thought. For a moment I feared I could lose my inheritance before having the chance to mend things. Kevin has told me you plan to travel to Europe this summer, I said, steering the conversation away once again. Yes, we are considering Italy for 3 weeks. Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement. The Amalfi Coast and then Tuscany. Kevin has been working hard and I need inspiration for the business. That sounds wonderful, I said sincerely. You will have a fantastic time. You have been there, right? During your sabbatical year? I nodded, surprised she remembered. Yes, I spent a month in Florence researching Renaissance textile patterns. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. For a moment, we connected through this shared interest, perhaps our first genuine exchange in years. Then her phone rang, breaking the moment. It is the office, she said, looking at the screen. I should take it. She went to the hallway and her voice switched to a professional tone. When she returned, she was already grabbing her bag. I am sorry, Mom. A client emergency. I have to go back. Of course, I said, standing up to see them out. So, are we okay? Drenia asked again, her hand resting on the handle. We will meet in Marcia's office, I said, without confirming or denying. Melissa hesitated, perhaps sensing my evasiveness, then leaned in to kiss my cheek. Try this perfume. It is what all the women in Paris wear these days. After she left, I placed the unopened bottle into the bathroom cabinet. Later, I called Marcia to confirm the details of our meeting. Everything is set, she assured me. I told them it is about updating your succession plan and advance directives. Nothing alarming, just standard planning. Do you have the documents prepared? I asked. Everything is ready, Barbara confirmed. Are you still sure about this? Family wounds can heal over time. Some wounds reveal truths we have been avoiding. I answered, I am not doing this out of spite, Marcia. I am doing it because I finally understand what needs to be done. Very well, she said. I will see you Wednesday at 2. That night, I dreamed about Richard. We were walking through our old garden, the one from our first home, where Melissa took her first steps. In the dream, he looked just like he did at 40. Dark hair barely streaked with gray, laugh lines around his eyes. What do you think about what I am doing? I asked him in the dream. He smiled that crooked smile I had missed all these years. I would think you have finally learned what I always knew. What is that? I asked. That? Being kind does not imply being a doormat, said the voice, reaching out to touch a blooming rose. You taught many things to Melissa and Barbara, yet never showed that love had boundaries. I woke up with tears on my cheeks, but felt a strange peace inside my heart. The dream made me realize Richard was right. I had never set limits with Melissa, nor shown her that respect mattered as much as love. On Tuesday afternoon, the evening before the meeting, Jasmine called. Grandma, is everything okay? Mom seems nervous about tomorrow. Everything is fine, I assured her. I only need to update some documents. She asked if we had been talking about her. Jasmine said she thinks you have been poisoning the well against her. I sighed. That sounds exactly like your mother, always searching for outside culprits. I told her we mostly talked about my design work. Jasmine agreed. Is it true? No, we have not spoken much about her, I admitted. Your work is far more interesting than family drama. Jasmine laughed, but then became serious again. Whatever happens tomorrow, I love you, Grandma. I love you too, dear, I replied, feeling an unexpected lump in my throat. More than you know. After hanging up, I sat in my study and reviewed the draft of my will again. The legal language was cold, but the intention crystal clear. Everything I own, my house in Eastmoreland, my retirement accounts, a collection of unusual linguistic texts, the heirloom jewels passed down from my grandmother, was meant for Jasmine. Melissa would receive nothing, not out of cruelty, but for clarity. I closed the folder and glanced at the photograph resting on my desk. Richard holding newborn Melissa, his face glowing with wonder. I whispered to his image, I hope I am doing the right thing. In the quiet of my empty home, I could almost hear his answer. You always do, Barbara, even when it is hard. Wednesday arrived with perfect clarity, a spring day so stunning that it seemed almost intentional. I dressed carefully in a charcoal suit, reserved for special occasions. I fastened my grandmother's pearl earrings and the simple gold watch Richard had given me on our 10th anniversary. Nothing flashy, but everything cherished. While driving downtown, I felt an unusual calm. No matter the coming storm, I had made my choice with clear purpose, not as a wounded reaction. Marcia's law firm was on the 5th floor of the historic Wickman building. The elevator door slid open to reveal a reception area of understated elegance. The receptionist greeted me by name and led me to Marcia's private conference room, where she was organizing papers on a polished oak table. You are early, she said. Looking up, I said, I needed a moment to gather myself. He gently squeezed my arm. I have arranged everything as we agreed. The copies of the documents are prepared, and there is water and coffee service available. Do you still feel comfortable with this plan? I nodded without hesitation. Your family should arrive in about 15 minutes. Would you prefer to wait here or in my office? Here is fine, I replied, taking a seat at the head of the table. I would like to organize my thoughts. When Marcia left, I sat alone in the quiet room. Through the windows, I could see Mount Hood in the distance, its snow-capped peak shining against the blue sky. Below stretched Portland, the city where I had raised my children, built my career, and buried my husband, the landscape of my life. At 2 o'clock sharp, the receptionist ushered my family inside. Melissa was the first to enter, dressed in an elegant cream-colored American suit and a silk blouse, her professional armor. Kevin followed, wearing a blue suit that suggested he had come straight from his office. Jasmine was last, looking somewhat uneasy, in a simple black dress with her hair tied back in a ponytail. "Mom," Melissa said, leaning in to kiss my cheek, "you look well." Her tone hinted at surprise, as if she expected me to look diminished somehow. "Thank you," I responded. "Please, everyone have a seat. Marcia will join us shortly." They settled around the table. Melissa and Kevin stood to one side, Jasmine on the other. It was a perfect picture of our family dynamics. "What is all this about?" Melissa asked with a light tone but sharp eyes. "Your message mentioned estate planning, but it is obvious you are not ill." "Thank goodness. I am just being cautious," I replied. "At my age, it is crucial to have everything well organized." "Smart," Kevin agreed. "My parents have just updated their will as well. It brings peace of mind to all of us." "Exactly," I responded, looking directly at him. Kevin was not unfriendly, simply more reserved. Richard had never contradicted Melissa in my presence, not even when she'd gone too far. I wondered if he did so in private. Marcia then entered, followed by her assistant carrying a folder with documents. "Thank you all for coming," she said, taking a seat beside me. "Mrs. Ellison has asked me to review some important updates regarding her estate plan with everyone here." "Is it really necessary?" Melissa asked, glancing at her watch. "Couldn't she have just sent the documents for us to review?" "The matters we are discussing today benefit from being clarified in person," Marcia answered gently. "And as your mother's attorney, I follow her instructions regarding how these issues should be handled." Melissa pressed her lips slightly, but nodded. "Before we begin," Marcia continued, "I want to confirm that everyone present—" They understood their connection to Mrs. Ellison. "Melissa Ellison, you are Barbara's daughter, right?" "Obviously," Melissa responded with a slight laugh. "Kevin, are you Melissa's husband and Barbara's son-in-law?" "Yes," Kevin nodded. "And Jasmine Ellison, you are Barbara's granddaughter, the daughter of Melissa and Kevin." "Yes," Jasmine confirmed. Her eyes shifted curiously between Marcia and me. "Thank you," Marcia said as she opened her folder. "Now I will review Barbara's updated will, which she signed 3 weeks ago, replacing all prior versions." I noticed Melissa's expression. I saw her narrow her eyes when she saw the date. 3 weeks ago, just after the Mother's Day lunch. The document begins with standard legal language confirming that Barbara is of sound mind and acting willingly, Marcia continued. The first section deals with personal belongings in the residence. She read the formal text with a professional and steady tone. I kept my attention on my family. Kevin seemed attentive but relaxed. Jasmine looked bewildered. Melissa kept a carefully neutral expression. None of them had realized what was coming. "Regarding the asset distribution," Marcia said as she turned a page, "Barbara has arranged for her entire inheritance, including real estate, financial assets, personal possessions, and all other properties, to pass completely to her granddaughter, Jasmine." The room fell utterly silent. Jasmine stood there, wide-eyed. Kevin raised his eyebrows, yet it was Melissa's face that caught my full attention. The way her expression froze, then creased and tightened in swift succession, was unmistakable. "There must be some mistake," she finally said, her voice tense. "A section must have been skipped." "There is no mistake," Marcia responded calmly. "The third section clearly states, 'I make no provision for my daughter, Melissa Catherine Ellison, not because of oversight or error, but by deliberate choice.'" "This is absurd," Melissa said, her cheeks flushing with color. "Mom, what is this?" I stared at her. "It is exactly what it appears to be, Melissa. I have decided to leave my estate to Jasmine." "But why?" Drania asked, raising her voice. "Because of a remark made at lunch." "Seriously, you are so stingy." "That was not a mere comment," I whispered. It was decades of disrespect culminating in that moment of complete clarity. "You made it clear that my only worth to you is financial, so I made a financial choice in response." "Grandma," Jasmine interjected, her face pale. "I don't understand. I never asked for this." "I know you didn't, dear," I said softly. "It is not about asking. It's about recognizing who truly values what I have to offer. My knowledge, my experience, my perspective, not just my checkbook. This is madness." Melissa's voice had risen almost to a shout. A shout. "I am your daughter, your only daughter. Yes, I acknowledged and supported you throughout your entire life, your upbringing, your business, your home. I have given generously and gladly, but I will not leave my legacy to someone who sees me merely as a financial asset." Kevin placed a hand on Melissa's arm. "Let's stay calm. I am sure we can work this out." "Do not tell me to calm down," Melissa snapped, pulling away from him. "My mother is going to disinherit me over a careless remark." Do you truly believe it is just about that? I asked, maintaining my tone. A remark? What else could it be? Drenia questioned. Perhaps the years of dismissing my experience as outdated, constantly undermining me when I speak, calling my research dusty and irrelevant, and teaching Jasmine that my advice is worthless. That is not fair, protested Melissa. I have always respected you, haven't I? I interrupted, surprising even myself with my firmness. You have not. And that moment at brunch only confirmed what I have suspected for years. You see me as a financial resource, not as a mother with valuable wisdom to share. Mrs. Ellison, Marcia interjected gently, would you like me to continue with the document? I nodded, grateful for her professional detachment. As Marcia kept reading the technical details of the will, I watched the emotions flicker across my family's faces. Jasmine looked overwhelmed, her eyes full of confusion. Lost between her mother and me, Kevin seemed visibly uneasy, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. And Melissa, my daughter, my only daughter, gazed at me with a mix of shock, anger, and something else, perhaps betrayal or acknowledgement. That concludes the summary of the document, Marcia said. Are there any questions regarding the technical aspects of the will? Yes, Melissa replied. Her voice, now steady, turned cold. Is it legal? Absolutely, Marcia confirmed. Under Oregon law, a testator has the right to distribute their assets as they see fit, provided they are of sound mind and not coerced. And have you confirmed their sound mind? Melissa asked, quoting the phrase. I have, Marcia replied firmly, as did a second attorney who reviewed the document and witnessed the signature. Melissa turned to me, eyes shining. So this is your revenge for a bad day? It is not revenge, I said calmly. It is a consequence. And it was not a bad day, Melissa. It was the result of years of disrespect. I cannot believe this, she said, standing up abruptly. After everything I have done for you, I raised an eyebrow. Everything you have done for me? She hesitated briefly, then recovered. Yes. Who takes you to your medical appointments? Who helped you set up your new computer? Who invites you on vacations? Kevin takes me to my appointments, I whispered. Jasmine set up my computer and the invitations to the... Vacations are not acts of kindness when they arrive, followed by criticisms of my attire, my views, and even my very existence. This is so unfair. She insisted while picking up her purse. Kevin, let's go. It is clear that my mother has lost her mind, and I will not endure this humiliation. Kevin hesitated, looking between his wife and me. Go ahead, I said softly. We can talk another time, Kevin. He reluctantly got up. Barbara, I hope you will. Reconsider family is family. It must be treated with respect. I finished for him. That is not open for negotiation. Melissa was already at the door. Jasmine, are you coming? Drenia asked. Jasmine looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes. Grandma, I don't know. What to say? You don't have to say anything now, I reassured her. We can talk later. For now. Go with your parents. She stood slowly, still confused. Are you sure? I nodded. I am sure. This is not about getting involved, Jasmine. It is about doing things right. They left. Melissa turned toward the door. This is not over, she said, her voice trembling with anger. You will regret this, Mom. After they were gone, the meeting room fell silent. Marcia gathered her papers without comment, respecting my need for quiet. Reflection. Well, I said finally it went as I expected. You handled it with remarkable poise, Marsh observed. Are you all right? I considered the question seriously. Yes, I said, surprising myself with the firmness of my voice. For the first time in years, truly believe I am. While driving home beneath the warm glow of the late afternoon, I felt lighter, not victorious, because there is no triumph in causing pain, even if it must be done, but rather validated. At last, the truth had been spoken aloud, and no matter how painful it was, the truth held its own kind of peace. That evening, my phone rang multiple times, twice from Jasmine and once from Kevin. I let the calls go to voicemail. I needed space to absorb everything. Melissa did not call. I slept remarkably well that night, and by morning felt ready for any storm that might arise. The hardest part was over. The will had been read. The silence shattered. Now we all would have to live with the truth. The days after the meeting unfolded like a play in which everyone had forgotten their roles. My phone swung wildly from bursts of activity to an ominous silence. Melissa's approach was predictable. She left a biting voicemail accusing me of elderly hysteria before dropping all contact. Kevin sent occasional text messages with a robotic tone of apology, but no real commitment. Jasmine's communications were the most complicated. Disturbing messages were followed by 2 handwritten letters arriving in my mailbox, penned in elegant script that filled pages with questions and confessions. I replied to each one with care. I maintained the same composed calmness I had shown earlier in Marcia's office. When Kevin approached me, I responded with brief assurances that I harbored no ill will towards him personally. To Jasmine's letters, I sent careful replies that clarified my intentions without pressuring her to take a side. I offered the same silence in return for Melissa's quiet distance. 1 week after the reading, the doorbell rang on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I opened it to find Kevin standing there, his suit slightly damp and his expression uncertain. "Barbara," he said, "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I answered, stepping back to let him inside. "Is this a good time?" he asked as he followed me to the kitchen. His lanky frame seemed too large for my modest rooms. "Melissa doesn't know I'm here." "I assumed as much," I said while filling the kettle. "How is she?" Kevin ran a hand through his thinning hair, appearing angry, hurt, and confused all at once. "She has been consulting with lawyers." I nodded, not surprised. "And what have they told her?" "That it is unlikely she can successfully challenge the will," he admitted, "but she is determined to try." "That sounds like Melissa," I said, setting cups on a tray. "She rarely accepts limitations gracefully." Kevin's laugh was hollow. "That is an understatement," he muttered, and then added, "She is also facing some professional difficulties. The agency lost 2 major clients last month." I took in the information without comment. Although I did not enjoy dealing with Melissa's problems, I also understood they were not my responsibility to fix. This realization still felt fresh after many years of maternal interference. "Barbara," Kevin said while pouring the tea. I stayed silent during that lunch. I should have spoken up. "Yes," I accepted simply. "You should have spoken up." He shuddered slightly at my bluntness. "I have never been good at confrontations." "Few are," I admitted, "but sometimes silence can be its own kind of cruelty." We sipped our tea, rain tapping softly against the windows, creating a gentle soundtrack to our uneasy conversation. "I am not here to ask you to change your mind," Kevin said at last. "I understand why you made your decision." "Do you truly understand?" I asked with genuine interest. He nodded slowly. "Better than you think. I've been watching how Melissa treats you for years. I have tried talking to her, but she interrupts. Yet she dismisses your concerns." I finished for him. "How does she dismiss mine?" "Yes." His admission seemed to deflate him somehow. "The thing is, Barbara, I love her despite everything." "I do too," I said quietly. "Love has never been the problem." "Then what is the problem?" Drenia asked, leaning forward, "because Melissa thinks this is about punishment." I considered my answer carefully. "It's about consequences, Kevin, not punishment. There is a difference. Throughout her life, Melissa has treated me with growing disdain, confident that she would never be affected materially by me. Now she realizes the opposite, yet completely excluding her shows exactly how she has treated me. I interrupted gently. She has entirely shut me out as a person with a valuable perspective. Instead, she has reduced me to a financial asset. I am responding in kind. Kevin examined his cup of tea and feels caught in the middle. I know that. I acknowledged it openly. It was never my intention. I chose Jasmine as the heir because she has demonstrated genuine respect and interest. Not because I wanted to create division, but you have done so, he pointed out. I created division. I did not fix it. I have only revealed a rift that already existed. There is a difference. We finished the tea in thoughtful silence. When Kevin was about to leave, he paused at the door. Melissa is planning a trip to Europe for July. He said, 3 weeks in Italy. She says we need it more than ever right now. I nodded, recalling my daughter's excitement about the Amalfi Coast. I hope you both enjoy it. It will test our finances, he admitted, especially with the business troubles. She was counting on, well, my contribution. I ended his sentence for him. He had the grace to look embarrassed. Yes, perhaps that illustrates my point better than anything I could say. I watched him leave and then sat in my study reflecting on our conversation. I did not feel any satisfaction from my daughter's struggles, yet I also did not feel obligated to fix them. For the first time in our relationship, I allowed Melissa to face the natural consequences of her actions. It was not punishment, just the reality of the situation. The following day, Jasmine called and asked if she could come over. She arrived tired, her usual energy subdued by family stress. Mom is thinking about challenging the will, she said bluntly as she sat at my kitchen table. She has consulted 3 different lawyers. I expected that, I replied, pouring her a glass of iced tea. All of them told her she would most likely lose, Jasmine continued. However, she has convinced herself that you were not in your right mind when you made the changes. I smiled faintly. Your mother has always been skilled at reshaping reality to fit her desires. Grandmother, Jasmine lowered her voice almost to a whisper, I do not want your money. I reached across the table to cover her hand with mine. This is not about money, Jasmine. It is about acknowledging your worth. But I feel bad, she insisted. I have done nothing to deserve this. You have not, I said. You have shown me respect. You have appreciated my experiences and views. You have treated me as a whole person, not just a financial asset. In my opinion, that deserves recognition. She shook her head, worried, but it is causing me a lot of pain. Dad says Mom hardly sleeps, cries, then gets angry and afterwards tries to pretend everything is fine. And how are you handling it? I asked gently. I feel shattered, she confessed. I understand why she did it. I even think Mom deserved a warning, but this feels so final. It does not have to be, I told her. The will can be changed again if the circumstances justify it. Hope sparked in her eyes. And if Mom apologizes, really apologizes, it would be a start, I acknowledged. But true change takes more than words, Jasmine. It requires consistent behavior that shows genuine understanding. She nodded slowly. That is fair, but at least you will consider it. If she makes real efforts, I will always consider any sincere attempt at reconciliation, I promised. I did not make this decision lightly, and I will not hold on to it just out of stubbornness. Jasmine seemed relieved by this reassurance. We spent the rest of her visit talking about her design projects, deliberately moving away from family tensions. When she was about to leave, she hugged me tightly. I am sorry about what is happening, she whispered, but I don't feel like you have stood up for yourself, Grandma. Her words stayed with me long after she left. Standing up for myself, such a simple idea that it had taken me 71 years to fully accept. What might my life have been like if I had done so sooner? What could Melissa have been given? 2 days later, I received an official letter from a lawyer representing Melissa. It outlined her plan to challenge the will due to undue influence and lack of sound judgment. I forwarded the letter to Marcia, who answered with calm professionalism. "This is a typical stance," she assured me over the phone. The letter lacked any substantial legal basis, only containing threats aimed at pressuring you to change your mind willingly. "And what if this goes to court?" I inquired. "Then we will submit proof of your mental competence, Melissa's consistent pattern of disrespect, and the reasonable nature of your decision to leave your estate to someone who truly values your wisdom as well as your possessions," Marcia explained. "Barbara, you are on firm legal ground." I thanked her and hung up, feeling oddly detached from the legal maneuvers. The conflict had shifted from emotional turmoil to paperwork and legal tactics. There was something almost calming about that shift. That evening, an unexpected message arrived from Kevin. "Trip to Italy canceled. I'm too stressed to plan it. Today I lost another client." I did not reply right away. I was unsure what reaction he wanted to elicit. Was he trying to make me feel guilty, elicit sympathy, or simply keep me updated on his situation? After thoughtful consideration, I responded simply, "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope things improve soon." There was no response from him after that. To wait, she is fighting more than she admits. Pride will not allow her to reach out. This time, I did not respond at all. If Melissa wanted reconciliation, it had to come from her directly, not through the diplomatic channels of Kevin. June turned into July with the typical summer charm of Portland. I tended to my garden, met friends for meals, and carried on with my classes at the community college. Life moved forward with a normalcy that felt both ordinary and revolutionary at the same time. I lived without the burden of Melissa's expectations, without the constant obligation to provide her with financial or emotional support, even though she dismissed my character. It was not exactly happiness. There was too much unresolved pain for that, but it was a kind of peace. The peace that arises when you finally speak your truth, no matter the consequences. And as the summer flowers blossomed in my garden, I began to feel that something else was taking root alongside that peace. Hope not to return to old habits that had broken irrevocably, but for the possibility of something new and perhaps more genuine between us, something built on mutual respect rather than obligation. It was yet to be seen whether that hope would flourish or wither, but for the first time in our relationship, I was willing to wait and see what Melissa chose to nurture. August arrived with its own special glory in Portland. Clear skies, mild temperatures, and gardens bursting with life. My roses had never looked healthier, and I spent peaceful mornings tending to them, discovering metaphors in their growth that might have seemed heavy in a novel, but felt deeply meaningful in real life. Some needed trimming to thrive. Others had to be separated from competing plants. All required care and space. Nearly 3 months had passed since the will was read. The formal legal challenges from Melissa's lawyer had faded after Marcia provided thorough documentation about my mental capacity and the intentional nature of my decision. According to Jasmine, who had become my main family contact, Melissa had reluctantly accepted the legal reality, although she continued her emotional complaint. "She is telling everyone that you have had some sort of nervous breakdown," Jasmine told me during one of our weekly lunches, "or that you fell under bad influences, though she is not quite sure who that might be." I smiled weakly. It is an easier story to believe than simply admitting I have had enough. Dad says the business is going through serious trouble. Jasmine pushed her salad around her plate and went on. They have lost 4 major clients in 3 months. Mom is not sleeping well. I nodded, taking in the information without making any remarks. Although I was not pleased with Melissa's challenges, I recognized that it was not my responsibility to solve them. Aren't you going to ask why they are losing customers? Jasmine asked, studying my expression. Would knowing change my perspective? I inquired gently. Jasmine considered it for a moment. Probably not, but you do care. Of course I care, I replied. I will always be concerned about your mother's well-being, but caring does not mean I have to save her from the consequences, especially when those consequences come from her own decisions. What do you mean? She frowned. Has she explained why clients are leaving? I questioned. Something about creative differences and budget cuts, she said with a shrug. Typical business excuses. Or perhaps, I suggested cautiously, they might be facing the same treatment I experienced. Dismissal, disrespect, and being undervalued. Jasmine was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. I have seen how Cass treats her staff. It is not good, especially when she is under stress. Patterns repeat themselves, I said simply. 2 days later, I received a message from Kevin. Melissa wants to see you. Can we have coffee tomorrow? I considered his request carefully. Was I ready for this conversation? What would a satisfactory outcome look like? After thinking it over, I replied, yes. I proposed Driftwood Cafe at 10 in the morning. I chose the place deliberately, a quiet corner cafe. Near the university where Melissa and I had occasionally met during her college years, I held memories of a more balanced period in our relationship before her success turned into arrogance. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in the corner that offered privacy and a clear view of the entrance. Exactly at 10 in the morning, Melissa walked in. She appeared thinner than I remembered. Her usually flawless look was slightly worn, her hair styled with less care, and her makeup applied less perfectly. "Mom," she said, sitting down across from me. Her voice carried neither warmth nor hostility, but a careful neutrality. "Melissa," I replied in the same calm tone, "do you want some coffee?" I already ordered it at the counter. Thanks. We sat in awkward silence until her latte arrived. She wrapped her hands around the cup as if seeking warmth despite the summer day. "I guess you know why I wanted to meet," she finally said. "I have some ideas," I admitted, "but I would prefer to hear your perspective." She took a sip of her latte, calming herself. "The business is facing difficulties. We have lost several important clients. The economy is in crisis, and marketing budgets are often the first to be cut." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "Kevin and I are considering downsizing the company. Our mortgage is substantial and without the advance inheritance." I responded when she hesitated. "Yes." Her cheeks flushed slightly. "Without that, and with the issues in the business, we face tough choices." "I understand," I said. "And you are here because you need my help, Mom," she said with a note of frustration creeping into her voice. "It is not obvious." "What kind of help are you looking for?" I asked deliberately. "Financial," she admitted without meeting my gaze. "A loan or an advance on what would have been my inheritance." "I see," I said again. "And is that all you wanted to discuss today?" Her eyes locked onto mine. What else could there be? The moment crystallized everything that had brought us here. Her complete inability to realize that reconciliation might require more than a financial arrangement, that relationships held value beyond material support, perhaps an acknowledgement of, "What has led us to this point?" I suggested softly. Or reflections on our relationship beyond its financial aspects. "Do you mean you want an apology?" she said firmly. "For what I said at the Bronco would be a start," I admitted. "But more importantly, I would want you to recognize that the comment reflected a pattern, not an isolated incident." Melissa sighed heavily. "Fine. I'm sorry for saying what I said. It was thoughtless and hurtful. I was stressed from being the host and took it out on you. Is that what you needed to hear?" "What I need," I said carefully, "is to know that you see me as a whole person, Melissa. Not just as a financial asset or an outdated relic, but as someone who has worth beyond what I can provide materially. Of course I see you as a person, she said with clear irritation. You are my mother. Being your mother is a relationship, not an evaluation of my value. I pointed out, how have you shown that you appreciate my viewpoints, my experiences, my knowledge? She looked genuinely puzzled. What does all of that have to do with the will? Everything. I replied simply, has everything to do with it. We stayed silent as she absorbed all this with a face that shifted from confusion to frustration, and finally, a hint of understanding. So it is not about money, she said slowly. It is about respect. Yes, I confirmed, it always has been. But you changed the whole succession plan because you felt disrespected, she argued. That seems extreme. It does seem so. I asked, have you systematically dismissed my importance in every area except financial support? I have merely aligned my estate plan with the relationship you have chosen to nurture. Another silence fell between us, deeper than before. Around us, the cafe continued its morning rhythm. Students tapping on their laptops, professors grading papers, waiters taking orders. Life went on normally while our little drama unfolded. The acknowledgement was unfolding in a corner. I do not know how to fix this, confessed Melissa at last with a softer tone than I had heard in years. It is an honest beginning, I admitted. Maybe you should start by considering what kind of relationship you want to have with me beyond financial support. I want to, she hesitated, seeming to search for words that were neither rehearsed nor performative. I want things to return to normal. Normal was working, I said gently. Normal was me accepting the dismissal in exchange for being included in your life. Normal was financial support without mutual respect. She glanced at her half-empty cup. I do not know how to be different. That is something only you can decide, I told her. But I would start with a genuine curiosity about who I am beyond being your mother. An interest in my thoughts not because you are forced to listen, but because you recognize they might be valuable. What if I do that? Jasmine asked. Will you change the will again? I shook my head slowly. This is not how it works, Melissa. Reconciliation is not a transaction. The will can change as our relationship evolves, but it cannot be the goal of reconciliation. She seemed frustrated again, so I said, I have no guarantees. You might work through all this emotional material and still get nothing. If nothing is how you categorize a healthier relationship with your mother, then maybe we have even more work to do than I thought. Pay attention. Our discussion ended shortly after, without reaching any definite conclusion. Melissa left promising to reflect on everything, though her expression suggested she was more concerned with financial solutions than relational ones. 2 weeks later, Jasmine called me with unexpected news. Mom has started therapy, she said, her voice revealing genuine surprise. Twice a week. She didn't admit it was because of your conversation, but Dad says it is. I responded, that is a positive step. Truly glad for her well-being. Jasmine continued, she has asked me to help with the business, specifically managing customer relationships. She believes I have a better gift for people. I smiled at this indirect acknowledgement of Melissa's interpersonal limits. It seemed like a good opportunity for both of us. Jasmine added something more, her tone turning serious. I have been thinking a lot about your offer to help create that scholarship fund for non-traditional linguistics students. I want to help make it happen. Are you sure? I asked. It would mean using part of what will eventually be your inheritance. I am sure, she answered firmly. It is important to honor your grandmother's legacy, the real legacy, not just the financial one. 2 days later, Jasmine arrived at my house with a laptop and a notebook, ready to work on establishing the scholarship fund. We spent the afternoon drafting mission statements and eligibility criteria, eligibility and application procedures. It was the moment filled with the most energy I had felt in months, perhaps even years. My academic knowledge combined with Jasmine's fresh perspective, together creating something truly meaningful. As autumn approached, bringing the first hints of color to Portland's abundant trees, small changes unfolded within my family constellation. Melissa began sending me occasional messages, brief at first, but gradually becoming more substantial. They were not apologies, rather questions about my research, my thoughts on a book she had read, and my advice regarding a personnel conflict she was handling. I responded thoughtfully to each inquiry, avoiding both withholding and overwhelming her. Our exchanges remained cautious, like dancers trying to relearn a forgotten choreography. But there was movement where before only stillness existed. By late September, I received an unexpected package from Melissa. Inside, there was a framed photograph I had never seen before. Richard holding newborn Melissa with me beside them, my face glowing with overflowing joy. Attached was a simple note saying, "I found this while cleaning the storage. I thought you would like it." Also, she mentioned she had started reading my book on indigenous textile patterns, discovering many things she had not known. It was not yet a reconciliation, but it was an acknowledgement, and for now, that was enough. The scholarship fund, officially called the Barbara Ellison Scholarship for Linguistic Diversity, was formally established in October, with its first recipient set to be announced the following spring. Jasmine insisted on arranging a small gathering at the university to mark the occasion. To my surprise, Melissa attended. She remained somewhat uneasy on the sidelines, but showed up. When the head of the department acknowledged my contributions to the field, I noticed my daughter looking at me with an expression I had not seen in years, something that seemed like not pride, but at least recognition. After the reception, as we waited together in the autumn dusk for our respective rides, Melissa cleared her throat. "Now I understand," she said quietly, "what you meant about being seen." I nodded, giving her time to continue. "Seeing those people talk about your work today," she went on, "hearing how you have impacted this field made me realize I never allowed myself to see that part of you. It was easier to dismiss it than to accept that my mother has had this meaningful existence beyond me." "It is not too late to see it now," I offered gently. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon instead of meeting mine. "I will try." My car arrived first. As I was about to leave, Melissa surprised me with a brief and awkward hug. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up completely." I asked what exactly she meant. The scholarship, the chance for reconciliation, or my maternal love. Despite everything, perhaps she was referring to all of those things. Maybe she herself was not entirely certain. As I drove back home along the tree-lined streets beginning their autumn transformation, I felt a similar change stirring within me. It was not the dramatic shedding of leaves, signaling complete renewal, but the slow shift of colors that comes before, delicate and beautiful in its state of transition. In recent months, I had regained more than just my dignity. I'd found my voice, my boundaries, my sense of self-worth beyond maternal sacrifice. By doing so, perhaps I had also given Melissa the chance to reclaim something, a relationship grounded in genuine acknowledgement rather than expectations and obligation. It remained to be seen if she would fully embrace that opportunity. True change unfolds gradually if it happens at all, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about that possibility. For now, the will had not changed, yet the legacy it represented had already begun to evolve from a mere financial inheritance into something far more meaningful. The realization that respect, once earned, must be preserved, that love without. Recognition feels incomplete, that even the quietest voice deserves to be heard, and sometimes that voice must speak through the silence before it can truly be understood. To be truly appreciated for the wisdom it holds is something remarkable, Below, there are 2 more incredible stories waiting just for you. You only need to click on the image you want to explore, and it will start to speak.